All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We are the Heretic Sisters. And really quick, we're going to go through our mission before we start this episode. I am the hopeful heretic. I'm interested in exploring all of the frequencies with the hope of revealing something higher than our limited minds can grasp. Questions I'm pondering: what is the truth? Can we both have an individual truth and a shared truth? Is it possible to be an individual within a group? What is our individual versus shared responsibilities? Is shared and balanced equity possible?
Hi, everybody. I'm Tatiana, and I'm the fearful heretic. I'm all about getting to the bottom of things. I also want to try everything at once. Questions I'm pondering: how does one see reality without distortion? How can we embrace all the blooming complexities of life? How do we express our experiences in creative work? The question, what's it all for, has not left me since my teenage years.
All right. So we are going to talk about the future today, specifically about the movement to the right. If you study human design in depth, you know that there is this movement, evolutionary movement toward rightness, away from the yang left strategic energies, the cross of planning, and what's enabled developed countries to scale any service imaginable, where we've manipulated life to fit our needs, towards receptivity, living life experientially in smaller pentas with a higher level emotional awareness, from manifestors ruling the world to projectors guiding the energy. And so it is with our pleasure to invite our first projector to the show, who also happens to be quad right, and our first 2-5 profile. His name is Daniel. By the way of introducing him, we'd love to talk about his experience getting his master's degree in therapy right as his Saturn return hit in 2020, and also conveniently, and probably why he decided to go into this. I think he mentioned this. COVID was rampant, and we all had to stay home, and we met ourselves. Had to spend more time with ourselves. So I'd love for him to talk about that. But really quickly, I wanted him to talk about what he experienced in that master's degree, and how he participated in a neurofeedback study, which demonstrates how different his brain is constructed as a quad right. Daniel, welcome. Can you give us a little bit of background about why you decided to get a master's in therapy and what this study revealed to you?
Yes, well, thank you once again for inviting me onto the show. I am so grateful for being here. As far as going into the my experience with neurofeedback and being a quad right, I was very interested in, obviously us coming into this field, we're very interested in helping people, but sort of getting into that next level of interfacing the brain and sort of getting a little bit more detail into how that works. That fascinated me. So I joined the neurofeedback program, and we're supposed to be what's it called, getting the readings on everybody's brains, but I kind of wanted to be a rebel because I'm a 2-5, and I hooked up my own brain. I did it without being told I could do it, but I told my professor. So that's how the 2-5 rebel in me is in there. But as far as how it connects to being a quad right. So when we have brain waves, I kind of made the analogy that the slower the brain wave, the more receptive it is, if you want to really think about it that way. Because if we look at all the brain waves from the very foundation, the very beginning, we see them on the screen there. We have delta, which is basically when you're asleep. So when you're not conscious, so you see on that diagram, there's no connections going on because I'm awake. And the way you can see the receptivity of delta is that's where your brain is totally receptive. It's integrating everything. It's resting. It's recuperating. It's got all its defenses down. And so we need delta. If you don't have delta, you're going to have all sorts of issues when you're when you're awake, and that's probably why a lot of people struggle with mental with stress and all that, because that's not getting enough sleep. But I don't know if this is the right format how I should do it, but I'm just going to move on to theta, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So if we move on to theta, that's usually where you're a bit drowsy, you're yawning, you're maybe for people that have ADHD, that's an area where if you see on that where it says theta, there's the very front of the brain, there's connections there connecting. And when you see that, that's a lot of ADHD going on, because the front of the brain's a little sleepy. It's a little bit relaxed, a little too relaxed there. But it's interesting how it works for the quad right. It's not quite the same as if it was for anyone else. But anyway, so yeah, so with theta, it's the brain wave where I think it's one of those where everyone needs to experience it at some point, and needs to at least come to some kind of a place where the slowing of the mind is necessary. Because if you're constantly in the stress mode, and you don't get that proper meditation and relaxation, and this is the area where you can really get that profound breakthrough, because it's almost like a trance-like calm state that you meditate yourself into, or whatever the situation, however it works for the individual to be able to achieve that kind of a relaxed state. And we can go a little bit into that if you want, but and then with alpha, this is where you're calm but you're alert. So you're not engaged in anything busy. You're not in any kind of busy work, but you're present. You see that balance there. I have to make it for the emphasis.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's basically the basic walkthrough you wanted to present before we look at your brain?
Yeah, and I can just say that alpha is just the area where I guess we're moving to, because creativity is the thing that sort of fosters alpha, where you're able to harness that make you unique, and not necessarily just to be busy or just because you have a goal in mind, but because you're trying to express who you are, and that's where you're an alpha, and that's kind of why it relates to being on the right. And I guess I'll just finish it with beta, and that's just the one that we all know, and that's just grind, baby, generator all the way. This is like the world we live in. We need the beta. That's what keeps the world going. That's what keeps us, alert and structured. And so anyway, yes, I just wanted to finish that up. So yeah.
Sorry, I'm not used to this conversation, so I'm interested in all the different types of brains. So let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. So the beta is left.
Yes.
Left is what you described. Left. Strategic.
And alpha is right. You mean so? Alpha is the right brain, yeah.
Yeah. It's on a spectrum, because technically you can go higher than beta, and if you're people that if you're past beta, you're definitely you're in an anxious state, and so it's a continuum, but that's sort of like linking the brain through this process and connecting it to leftness and rightness in that tangible way, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. This beta 2 state is like an anxious state, yeah? You see on the lower line, beta 2, it is like you're going almost crazy with your thoughts. You're like have an extremely active brain, yeah?
Yeah, and that's happening all at once. So all the things you see there are layered. So they're all happening at the same time. So you're able to get a snapshot of like, oh yeah, there's some anxiety there from the beta 2, and anyway, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And
so you can actually measure it, like fix
exactly. Yes, and then now Elon Musk has that Neuralink, and we don't know it's going to work, but the ideal is that you're getting to the final frontier in some way, with that, if it's possible. But it's a nice idea.
So I would love to talk about your brain and how you connected it to quad right, and then also follow up with some questions about whether you did this with other people and different types of brains. I would be so curious because Tatiana and I both have a left brain, but I have a right mind. And Tatiana has a left mind. And I'm curious if we could do some real life studies about what the difference might be. That's what it brings up in me. But first I want to talk about you because you are here and you were hooked up and you are
Nice.
right, and how you experienced this neurofeedback.
Yeah, it really, I think it really does. It is effective. If I think its uses are not quite fully understood and not, I mean, we're not using it. We're using it in a scientific setting, and it's not so much a spiritual setting. And I think it'll be interesting to see how it would work in that scenario where you're integrating all the spiritual knowledge that we know in human design, astrology, and just integrating that into how we formulate, because it's just about training the brain. So the way it works is we study that we have patterns of behavior, like so anxiety will show up a certain way, certain patterns will show up in the way the brain looks, and it's the same for all these other mental conditions. And by basically targeting certain frequencies, and it's like a sort of feedback loop where the person is given a stimuli on the screen, and if their brain is in the right, if brain is targeting that area that's causing anxiety, they'll get a positive feedback on the screen and audio that come on the screen, and it's like, oh, you're in it, you're in the zone, you're not in the zone. Like it's sort of like that, and you sort of tweak it, and you're tweaking it to the person so that you're trying to target that particular area that's maybe overactive or underactive. Yeah.
Oh, so there's an ideal. There's, according to science or according to studies, there's an ideal resting place, or it just is very custom to your brain and what you need.
It's very custom to your brain. Yeah. So whatever that person has, like they might have anxiety that's on a, maybe, I'm not sure, I'm not giving a scale here, but let's say their anxiety is an 8 versus a 4, then the routine you'd create would match what their needs were, so that it targets that particular region. And we're able to do that by mapping it here. Like, oh yeah, we know that on the left area here, this means that this is anxiety here. We're going to target that. We're going to have that on a feedback loop where with audio and visual, and it's about getting creative with that, So like when I was doing it, I was picking different music and different visuals to sort of like knowing the person. I mean, like, okay, what might they like? What might they respond to better? Not just a generic audio that everyone else was using. And so, yeah, just I wanted to explore that more, but there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm for that there. So.
But did you notice any? Sorry, so did you notice how it works on the patients? So
Yes.
the results, and you saw it with your own eyes, yeah? How effective it is.
Absolutely, and I could say it works for me. So the thing that you can do, if since we don't have the equipment, is look up binaural beats. I look at the 8 hertz. I just listen to that. It's just like basically what it is 2 tones, one that is slightly out of tune from the other one, and your brain is like filling in the gap. It's like correcting the tone, and in your brain, that balance is like forcing your brain into a different frequency, and it relaxes you. I try the 8 hertz, but people can experiment with whichever range works for them. So, yeah.
But tell me about your natural resting place and how you related that to your rightness, and then why would you need to relax your brain more based on what you see as your natural resting place? I'm sorry, that's a lot to throw at you. Why don't you talk about your natural resting place and what and then we'll talk about the rest after.
Yeah. So for the natural resting place for me, so if you see there at 8 hertz, I'm about 3 standard deviations higher than the average. That's pretty high on the right ear. I don't have any way of confirming this because this is another science that I'm following where we're trying to track down what each region actually like signifies in terms of behavior, or just how we're using that part of the brain for the way we operate. And the right ear is a lot about listening to contextual meaning and getting really getting to the tone of what someone's saying just by not so much the words but the tone of voice. And that's exactly what that area is. And because it's a calmer area, it's really dialed in, you know. It's and so it's I take that the slower it is, the more receptive it is. It's taking it in. Yeah. But and so the average resting brain, according to what because my professors, we're just going off a database of all his students here, and the average that he has there for the resting is between 12 and 13, around there. So that's a normal sitting brain on average. And so that's where you kind of want to be if you want to be ready to take on the world and you know, but at the same time it's not overly active. It's 13, 12. But mine's sitting at 8, which means that I'm just chilling. I'm just, what's going on? It's not turning on. It's so, but yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything specific to say, but if you ask, I could answer anything. Yeah.
I would love to know what you have perceived is your strengths. Do you perceive your strengths based on this ideal resting place and where you're at, or what kind of struggles you've had based on this information?
Oh yeah, both of them. Both. The struggle is that I struggle with focusing. If I have to focus in on any task, it hurts my brain. And yeah, it's just like my wife does it so well. So when she has me do something, I'm like, please give me the most ape tasks that you have.
Ape task, come on.
But I almost can imagine what you feel, because my son is quad right and he has to study at German linguistic school in gymnasium, yeah. And he's really anxious. He has a lot of fears inside, just because all this system is not built for such persons, yeah. Like he always has to concentrate they want something from him. All he needs is time, yeah, and time to adjust in his own tempo and so on. No. This is you have to produce the result. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that relates a lot to the frequencies. His brain is probably working slower in some areas like that, because he's not like, I need time. I need to integrate this. I can't just focus in on every little thing, and you know, it burns out your brain. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, like, what is the ape tasks that you excel at, like you call it?
No, yeah. So with helping my wife out, because she does so much, she's so into like so many different things, and I'm it's like I can't keep up with that. And so just give me an ape task that I can just do, like well, I don't have anything here, but I don't know, like putting something in a box and just doing it like 100 times. I don't mind doing that.
Repetitive. You like?
Yeah, just something where I can just do that, and I can maybe do something like learn on the side. Like I can just I don't have to think about what I'm doing, and I can just actually be learning or taking in something else on the side, and it helps me get through a task. But I've always been very slow at things, very slow. And when I was younger, I was taking into English as a second language class because I was that slow. And so, yeah, but I feel like now it's what I guess the gift that I get is from the Gate 52, maybe, I don't know, stillness, you know, and this feeling of being able to see things from the outside because it's still enough to see. And that helps me my wife and other people too in counseling. I don't like to toot my own horn, but I know I saved some lives, just by being present and just listening. That's what we do, right? Projectors, we're here for that. But that's probably what the slowness has done. It allows you to see things a little clearer. Like the image is stiller. It's not moving as much. Instead of me acting constantly, it's more like just listening and
Receptive.
Receptive, yes, but it's nice that you found a space where you can act like this, or at least you have. Do you have enough of such time in your life when you could be receptive now, or
Yeah.
So at the moment, you have enough time.
Yeah, I have a lot of time. I'm so blessed with that because I know a lot of people aren't. But I'm also having to take care of my kids, so it's not like I'm just sitting around doing nothing. But I do. Yeah, I like to have that time to myself because it helps me get clarity on things, and that's the way I can be the most useful, to not be in a constant state of stress. And yeah, I mean that's not a luxury most people have, so I'm blessed.
About creativity, like, do you have are you a creative person? Do you have anything that you like to do creatively?
Yeah, I'm a musician. I've been a musician since I was maybe 10 years old, playing guitar in many different bands, different styles, and I play with my friends still occasionally. But yeah, I always was an improv player, and I got in trouble a lot when I was in school for that, because you got to play everything that's on the notes, and that's not me. I listened. I listened to the people playing it. I'm like, I can hear the parts. I don't need the music.
You're a jazz musician almost, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I did play in jazz. Yeah, yeah, just like listening to it, and like sometimes that we would be playing. I was like, I don't even like my part. Can I play like the saxophones part or the trumpets part?
Cool.
There's that. My big hobby that I know a lot of is history. I pretty much know everything about World War II. You can ask me. My wife was like doing a trivia. She's like, I want to do a trivia with you. She likes to compete with me. And she just started asking me, and I answered every question. I was like, babe, I'm sorry. I thought I would miss one or two.
That's
well.
They say about right is that we absorb. I'm only just speaking of my rightness, but we absorb so much, or we just collect information, and depending on how you work, like if you're so really into something, you collect, and then people pull it out of you, and so it's very easy in that way. But if you try to memorize something, or you try to focus your brain on things, you completely fail. Is that correct?
That is so true. Like for my master's degree, I won't lie to you, I did not open a single damn book.
Okay.
I just listened to the professor, like Ross says, just listen to them, just watch them, and it's like takes off the pressure of like you have to learn these. I'm like, just get the tone of what the guys or the lady is saying, what's important to them, and from there I can like sort of like, okay, yeah, I can focus in on that. But yeah, it's not so much about opening books or that. So
could we dig a little bit deeper into your master degree, and how do you feel yourself having 18.5 as your design son? Yeah, therapy line, which we has in Pluto. Yeah, we both have it in our Pluto design Pluto, and it looks like you are not do not recognize yourself as a counselor. Yeah, you feel that you belong to. So this is a tool that you have now. So how do you see this all? Your master degree, your counseling experience, and how was it? Are you staying in this field, or are you moving in some direction that is your own and so on?
Yeah, I appreciate that. First of all, the channel of the bitch, it's
Yes. 3 bitches together, enjoying their time. we all have this channel, all 3 of us. That's why
yeah,
it's
it sneaks up on me because it's in the body, right? So for me, it's like I suddenly say something, I'm like,
Where did that come from?
shut my mouth. Yeah. Yeah, it's good because my wife has it too, and that helps.
Nice. We're happy. We
It's
both
that has probably kept our marriage together, to be honest, over that COVID period of being together every day.
I think that's how Tatiana stayed together so far.
This is the most intriguing part of our conversation, but could we please get back to on track regarding your
Yes,
counseling
I'm
experience?
sorry. I just needed a good laugh.
18, yeah. That's nice. Always.
Yeah, so 1858.
And 18.5, yeah.
Oh, 18.5, yes. Oh, I've found that through life, I've had to literally like not say a lot of what's on my mind sometimes. Just let the process kind of unfold itself. And if they ask, only if they ask.
You learned it, yeah? Oh, yes. So even before design, you knew it somehow. You felt it, yeah?
I've been an asshole in my life.
But you're like 58 too.
But
Sorry. Again, back to channel 1858. Sorry.
yeah. No, but it helps a lot because you're able to really pick up on like every single little thing that that needs to be improved. And you know, somebody needs to do it. With my wife, I drove her crazy at first. I was like, baby, like she's like, what do you think about my book cover or whatever? I'm just like, no, I don't like that little thing there. And she hated that. She hated that so much at first. She's like, oh, why do you always bring my spirits down? I just wanted like you to say you like it. I was like, baby,
Don't ask.
Do you want to be successful? No, I say it as the joke, but that has really helped, I think. I mean, I have that the perversion line. I don't even know how that, how to translate that really, other than you're degenerate, basically. Is that what it means?
No. Why? So like you like very special things, as I understand. Like to be a jazz musician is kind of special thing, yeah. It's kind of complicated way of producing music, the hardest way, yeah. Jazz is to do the music the hardest possible way, yeah. Like
that's true.
Complicated, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any odd things that you like? What I would say about that line is that weird things excite you. They're not weird, but weird to other people, maybe. Like they don't get it.
Yeah, it has been the case for me. Being obsessed with the losers of history, like that's perverted, isn't it?
Yeah,
that is perfect.
Oh, wow. That's a thing.
Yeah, and in terms of what was the other part of the question? I'm sorry.
So I mean, actually, it was a question: how do you feel yourself with your 18 gate 18 line fifths as your design son and your diploma, your counseling master? And how do
Yeah.
you live it through? How do you feel yourself? Are you a counselor or are you on your own way? How was it? So how it is all general?
Yeah, so I did my internship, and I did a good job with my clients. They responded well, but it was mostly I guess I don't want to put people on the spot here, but they're probably not going to listen, right? So I guess the administration or the people that were just above me, I always have trouble with authority. That is a big problem. And maybe that's the 1858 too, right? Like fear of authority, right? So so that it starts with a fear, but then it starts to like, hey, you know what? Like you should be a little bit more open to what I say and not so rigid. I guess she was trying to just help me out and help me do things by the book, but I was just telling her like, there's the client was perfectly accepting of this. I asked if the client would be willing, and it helped them, and they seemed to be receptive and everything. It's like, no, you have to do things by this way. And then I was like, okay, well, I've been studying this particular methodology and I'm working with it with my wife. She's like, well, you can't use it on your wife. You have to have a special certificate to do it on you. I'm like, so to do it in the safety of my own house? Like, and when she wants me to do it too?
Yeah, so all these formalities are like, yeah.
That turned me off. It was like, I can't be in that kind of world. And then I would have to deal with insurance in this country. It's just, I mean, I don't know. In Germany, they have insurance for everything, but it's a pain in the butt. And so that's part of the reason why, even though I know that I'm a good counselor, I don't know if that's necessarily where I want to go. Yeah.
And
but
do you have an idea? Do you have anything tickling you about where it is you are drawn to?
Right now, I'm mostly trying to map out in my my mind, my defined mind, where we're going. And so that's kind of where my mind is, because I feel like I don't belong in this exact time period, like not in this year or two. I don't see it. I don't know. But I'm trying to map out where I might be useful down the line. And the whole AI thing comes to mind. I know I made a video about that, which is, but it is going to be, I think that change, whatever that change is, that's where I'm going to feel more useful to that, because I feel like right now I can't lock into anything. There's nothing to lock into. Yeah.
So you have this big comeback in 2027 sign, yeah? Yeah, come back. Please come back in 2027. I will be ready to answer all your questions.
Well, for now, go away. No.
You're not a planner. You're not a strategic planner. You're receptive to whatever comes in. So it's kind of a weird question for me to ask you, what you see, because being receptive, we just have to kind of wait. And projector, we kind of have to wait. I'm in that moment too, even though I'm a little bit more left than you. Is just knowing, I think Tatiana and I both have talked about this, is that hope motivation for us. Well, for me, sorry, Tatiana. And then, but you have too, in the possibilities. So for me, I guess I don't have a clear understanding. My path kind of unfolds as I walk it, and I have to trust. And that's a huge leap of faith, to trust what that means for us. I wonder if I wanted to talk about the Cro-Magnon. Is that how you say it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, Cro-Magnon, or just early humans. Yeah,
because we were talking about, before we move on to your chart and ask you more specific questions, there were a couple of posts that I saw of yours, and this was one of them, was about the neurofeedback, and then the other one was about your interest in and your actual feeling of alignment or understanding of that change that we had, that Ra talks about, which maybe if you have any history of understanding of that, maybe you can talk about that. And then why is it that you feel drawn to them? Because that's kind of we're almost like we're returning to that in some sense.
Yeah, I feel very drawn to that. I guess the primitive man. I had a past life reading, and it was, I already had known this, but I went into it, and the lady said that I do see you and as a caveman, and you were wounded, and you were being cared for by others. And I was like, huh, interesting. And I've always been sort of into Neanderthals, and they're different from us, but also similarity. And just I've been thinking about that difference. Where does that really come from? And it was, yeah, it's just when we were Neanderthals, we were 5-centered, so we didn't have our minds were dormant. We weren't using our minds to any. There were just potentials there that were not really harnessed. And it's also I guess the structure of the being. I guess the Neanderthal didn't have the structural mechanism, hardware to really pin things down. And that's they were living for hundreds of thousands of years, never settled to any particular spot, never claiming ground, never anything, just like accepting the life as it is, and making the best of it constantly. And but they did it successfully. They did it successfully for that long. And they didn't go away for something that was their fault either. They went away because it was their time. And we're, from everything that I've learned through the years, humanity is reaching the peak of its outward orientation, and so right now everything's about outward externals and reaching this goal or being there or building this, and so it's all about that, setting the foundation. And when we've been moving since the 1600s, we talked about that. It's almost, it moves backward because you start off as the role model, and as the whole cycle is moving through, you're finessing the cycle, and so you end up at the end with the foundation set for the next one. That's kind of how. So I mean, I don't know if maybe you guys already knew all this stuff. I'm just kind of like laying it out there. But yeah, I've been sort of obsessed with that, where we're going in terms of. I think the AI is going to be, doesn't have to be super smart. Maybe it's going to be smart, but it's going to be necessary simply because labor. If you look around, our population's going down. The cost of living is going up. So it's a lot of different factors kind of culminating to this need. Just when society is about to break down, we need some kind of a fix to help us, and that fix might end up actually changing everything. And how are we working to work, or are we working because we want to find more meaning to life rather than just for what you're working for, the goal of working, right? You're not doing it for that. But I'm going into a bunch of different things. I'm just, I don't know if you want. Yeah.
All good.
Yeah.
Oh, I started to hear an echo. Do you hear that? No? Okay.
Now everything is okay already. Yeah.
Do you have any follow-ups, Tatiana, before we move on to the chart?
No, at the moment. So let's move on then.
Yeah, we have so much to talk about, and dig into all of the things that you just talked about. It was perfect. I think we're all kind of interested. It's always fascinating to understand where we're headed, especially in this moment right now, where we all feel there's a change coming, but we don't really know what it is. And there's a lot of fear, I think, that happens when you're there in that that understanding. So let me just move on to the next slide.
To the chart, yeah. Whatever you have. Yeah, that's you.
Yeah.
So do you have a plan, or could we start with this wonderful 2-5 profile, and how is it okay with you? Yeah. So 2-5, like it is not that often that one can meet a person with such a profile. How do you feel your costume? How does it sit on your shoulders?
It's a little tight, but
That's a common problem.
that's definitely the fifth line coming out, right? Like that, like, oh, trying to be charming.
Prince Charming, yeah.
You're seducing yourself, Daniel. You're seducing yourself.
Yeah, so it has been this feeling that I don't want to get involved with society unless unless they're calling me out, just like it says, you know, this feeling like I don't want to interrupt it, or it's almost like the butterfly effect where you don't want to step on anything. You want to allow it to take its own course, and if it involves you, then it will come to you. But otherwise, try to allow it to take its own form. It's almost like the feeling like in a past life I may have overdone that, and if I'm saying it like a story, because it feels like a natural inclination to want to do that, to get involved, and that's maybe the desire transference that I've. Yeah, so if we actually just take this back, that's been me my entire life until recently, just wanting to get involved. And like, oh, I know the solution. I know I can get involved. I can save it, you know. And it's like, no, you can't.
What happened? Give us an example of maybe, you know, when you were younger, and what happens when you try to get involved, and what have you learned? I'd love to hear an example if you have one.
I feel that every time I've tried to I guess use the leader role for its own sake, it's always fallen flat, or it's felt like it's an excessive because it's like a harmony to innocence. You're trying to work a little like against the hill, or you're walking against the just to be able to lead. In order to being in transfers takes a lot of effort in some way when you actually think about it, but it's the natural place to go on the continuum. So, and you could stay stuck there. Oh yeah, I mean, I need to lead. It seems natural in this world. I need to be the leader. I need to, and it's like, but not being the leader, to just not be involved, that's not natural. That's not what we're, you know, what we're conditioned or whatnot. So, yeah, every time I've done that, every situation, it's always been like backlash, and you know, or it just doesn't. I can feel that it's not really coming out like the way I would want it to come out, and that's every time I've tried to do the innocent thing, or like not tried, but just honed in on that, or tapped into that, it feels so much more flowy with what I'm supposed to do. But that's not for everybody, because some people might have, you know, their chart might be contradicting certain aspects that make it harder to be in the correct self. You know, my chart helps me. Everything's pointing to the right, so it's helping me orient me towards that. And some people, it's a little more difficult, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be.
Do you so when you were growing up in your family, what was that like? Did they you mentioned, I remember that you had a pretty good upbringing and a pretty solid upbringing, but were there any expectations as far as who you were going to be or how you were going to turn out that you felt from them?
Yes, my dad. So my dad's north node was my north node is conjunct his sun. So I was like empowering my dad to be bigger and bigger presence for me. That's how it felt. And he always wanted me to do what he did, being a petroleum engineer, or be something that's successful. When I grew my hair out, he, not now, but back then, he did not like that. And I found pictures of him with long hair in the 70s. Like, what?
Hello.
No.
Oh boy.
And so, yeah. And when I did grow my hair out, he said things to me about it, that not flattering things. And, yeah, I guess it did feel that way. Everything about me it felt projected. It always felt like I needed to just go along with that. I didn't, I guess, question that as much. And I needed to sort of be away from my family to sort of like, okay, I can see it a little clearer now, because I'm not, the expectation is not there every day of you got to be this or you got to be that, or you're not matching up to what we thought you were going to be, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really clear. So actually, gate 18 and the upbringing was not that emotionally comfortable. Yeah. I do resonate with the things that you said, that you only after you left your family, you saw it from the distance. That was the same for me. I was totally buying it all out. I was in the process. So, for example, my sister, she's manifester. Yeah, she was like always saying, "Don't you see that our mother says some really interesting stuff? Don't take it so serious." She was understanding it when she was 14 or even earlier. And for me, it was a very long process to decondition myself from all these entrapments. Yes.
Yeah. Was your sister a fifth line?
No, she's 6'2". No, she's manifesto. So that's why she says, "Oh, we have the beautiful upbringing. What kind of questions do you have, Tanya?" And I have 18 and 1858. You know, you can imagine how many questions I have. Yeah, but not anymore. It's enough already. I was questioning.
Yeah. Well, there's the thing you were saying, that you were sort of going along with the expectations. There is a karmic thing there. That's what Ross says, right, with the fifth line, that we have some kind of karma with some people, and that's probably why that projection field kind of comes. And you don't. I always try to understand that. Like they must see what they want to see, but it's related to something that we were maybe in the past life. I don't know how that's, anyway.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about really quickly about your open centers, because you have a completely open ego without any receptors. And so I want to understand if you have any experiences around that mirroring. Do you see yourself mirroring other egos depending on who you're around, or do you sense that at all?
Could you give me an example?
Yeah. So we have an undefined, well, we have an open ego, but we have receptors, so we have themes, and Tatiana only has the 37 in her design. So and I have the 44 and the 37 as a receptor. So it's like people hook into me, and it's unconscious though. And so I react to certain things more strongly because of those receptors. So for instance, the 44 is a design Mercury. And so I have witnessed, now that I know about it and I've seen other people's designs, is sometimes when the 26 comes up, I have subconscious things that come up around what they're doing and how I feel that they're manipulating me. And I react very negatively to that because it possibly reminds me of something else. With you, you have no receptors at all. And I'm wondering, I remember you saying, you talked about this, you're like, you kind of can feel the frequency, and whether somebody is at a higher frequency than another person pretty immediately. And I'm sure that has something to do with your feeling cognition. But I wonder if it has something to do with the ego. How do you feel about the ego, I guess, is what I want to understand.
Yeah. I always do feel like I want to prove myself. I guess if right now I wanted to leave this as a mystery for now, but I'm doing a little piece on Abraham Lincoln because it's one of those heretic. He's a 5'2" heretic, mental projector, and one of the things that he said was, "My greatest ambition is to be esteemed by my fellow man," and that definitely resonates with me. Always feeling like I want to I want to prove myself. I want to do something that's worthy, but I don't. I'm not, I'm not there yet. Or and then I have my wife who she has the 26. She has the 2145, and so she's got it very defined. And I feel that feeling of her ego, like it moves you, almost like move out of my way, like. Not like in a literal way, but in a, it could be literal. I don't know. She has done that to me where she's like physically moved me. But as far as the ego, I don't really know if I understand how it's operating in me fully yet. I mean, if there's any insights as to
She
that, I would love them. Yeah.
You said she likes to compete with you. So what I've just heard from you is that she's got a defined ego. And so when you're around her, you're mirroring what she is bringing to the table. So if you're trying to prove yourself, that's pretty much a mirror of who's in your environment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it has affected me, but I think I've accepted, because I've accepted the fact that I'm a man and I'm not working. I'm not the primary earner, and she is. And that would, I think, for other men, that might, if they had an open ego, that might make you feel a little insecure. Like, hey, I got to do something now, because if not, this lady is gonna beat me. But I don't have that. I don't have the feeling of like, oh, she's, I give her other things that it's not necessary to feel that competition. So I don't know if that.
Yeah. So I would say maybe you have a misunderstanding about what an open center is. So I'd like to give you that information so you have it. An open ego means you don't know, the ego energies are strange to you. The egos, there's no patterning there. So it's like, that's not you. You're not here to prove yourself. That's not you, that's her. And you're kind of mirroring that activity. There's no, you've actually mastered that in a past life. That's what Ra has an opinion about a completely open center, and especially no receptors. There's absolutely no themes. You've mastered it. So you're saying, you just gave me feedback. Well, other men might be bothered by this, but I'm not. And there's sometimes a feeling of not knowing what to value. Like, why do you place value on somebody and their talents? It's like, seeing somebody that's needing you. Do they have to do a song and dance for you? Do they have to prove themselves to you? No, I'm just going to help them because they need me. That's the thing.
Yes, I remember seeing that or hearing that lecture about mastering lessons if you have really open centers. I guess I don't think about it, so that's why I was aware of the open center thing, but I didn't really think about how it operated in me. But that definitely answered my own question. So yeah.
It's the listening part, I think, probably is like, for me anyway, I hear people reflect back to me their chart, and so then I'm like, oh, well, that's this or that's this or that. That's, I think, the three cognition. And sometimes I see it better when it's written or it's outside of myself, but it's also the listening part, right? Tatiana, you feel that too?
Yeah, of course. And it's not another dimension that comes when you have a totally open center. It is like not that easy to grasp, but we were trying it in the process. So my son has totally open throat, and it also has a special influence on his life and the way he speaks. And you notice that this is a child that has he stops every time he starts to say something, but with a totally open ego, as Susan said, it is difficult to understand what is important, what is truly important. Take me everywhere. I want to be with you just because.
Yeah, I have found a lot of scholars and a lot of musicians, like especially like classical musicians, Mozart, Beethoven, Bach. They all had open throats, and so they struggled maybe with, but they were exploring the entirety of it in this flexible way that I can only imagine it must be.
Yeah.
And it's the same for me with that open sacral. I feel that I have zero idea how to use my energy at any given moment. But if I see someone's energy flow externally, I'm like, oh yeah, just do this, and this. There you got it. Fine. They're in. Oh yeah, and they go off running, and it's like, geez, I wish I could do that for myself.
Yeah, if it only could be possible. Yeah, so we have to learn it. We have to learn it. Yeah, just
Yeah.
staying on our track. Yeah.
But you have patterns there where you hook into people. So you have a little bit of you can have a better understanding of your sacral because you have the stillness that hooks into somebody who's focusing. Like we have the 9. So and then you have the 60 that hooks into the 3, and then you've got the 46. You know, so there's themes there. At least you can kind of grasp onto, and sometimes they say with the receptors, it's a mental conditioner. So sometimes you think you need this thing because that's the way you experience it whenever somebody hooks into you. But with the open ego, there's no
Nothing going.
thing.
Yeah, that's it's. I think it is what you're saying, that it's just a I guess maybe just a lesson that's already been, and then you see my ascendant in Pisces. It's almost in the last degrees. My North Node in Capricorn. It's also in the very last degrees. So there's this feeling that I'm finishing a cycle off. So it's the end of that.
Yeah, it is definitely. That's a big theme. And you have 2-5, and then we'll go into your astrology chart if we have time. Let's move on to the next question. So we had Tatiana. Do you want to take this one?
You mean the one about the mental projector, hopefully, or
yeah,
of course. So I just wanted to ask. So, do you recognize yourself? Do you feel yourself as a mental projector? Just because this wonderful part below is not completely, but it's not that especially conscious, and it looks like your emotional wave is like not known to you. Maybe, of course, probably you feel it through your body. But this is also a part
I cry a lot.
Yeah,
I cry a lot. I don't do it in a well, maybe it's an existential depression, but I guess for the first part of my life, and maybe just until very recently, I did associate with the mental projector thing. Because it was very conscious to me, and I know that I was a good storyteller all the time, and I always had good stories, but when it came to emotions, it was always like I didn't talk about them. They weren't something that was conscious, like you say. It pops up on you, it bubbles up. So you're in an equilibrium state, like maybe now, and I don't think about it that much. It's just but then when there's a spike there, then that's when like where's I don't know if that really is resonating, but so it's a very much a body thing, like you guys were saying, but the mental part of it, I relate to that very much, just being an external authority for other people too, and being able to articulate things in a way that's like makes sense just like a story. That's how I like to say everything, really. That's my modus operandi.
When you think about the wave in human design, when they talk about your authority, like how do you think about that if you're not conscious of it? Like how does that play out for you? Do you think of your emotions as your authority? How do you take in that information, I guess, as far as like, waiting to be invited and then waiting your wave out, like if you're not conscious of it?
Yeah, I think I've been experimenting with this the last few weeks to sort of catch myself in the midst of maybe the process of being in a wave or something, but and like me being frustrated with my children because they're doing this and they're doing that and they're running everywhere making a mess, And then, but I paid the conscious part of me, which is not necessarily emotional, like, I'll be, no, 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 no. And then I like bump my head on something. And right there, I'm like, that was a sign. Listen, just calm down right now. You know?
Yeah.
So it's a conscious, unconscious. It's trying to make sense of the unconscious, but yeah.
As far as your decision-making process, though,
Yes.
do you see that? Is it just a waiting for you, or is it something
Yeah.
or at all, or
This is good. So for the way I see it, for me, is I try not to get myself overly excited about the thing I really want to be excited about. And that's from just learning, because every time you get a little too excited about something, it won't be what you thought it was going to be. And that, so, and that goes back to the brainwave thing, because if you're keeping yourself in a state where you're anticipating it, but you're not expecting it, it's not quite. And Rock talks about the flattening of the wave, and to some degree it's necessary so that you're able to get clarity. And so for me, it's just allowing that. I lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
It's okay. No, completely okay.
So it's time. It's basically giving yourself the time that you need before you say yes or no. Or do you find soundboarding to be helpful? Like, because that's a mental projector. The soundboarding of talking it out before you make any clear decisions.
Yeah, but maybe I don't really know. Maybe this is the unconscious part there, right?
Yeah.
But I do try to wait. And that's more of a recent development where I'm just trying to wait, and it's like everything in yourself is like, what are you waiting for? Just do it now. Do it now.
As soon as possible. Yeah, please do it.
Yeah, like, and there's a reach out. I'll be like, oh, we should do this and this and this. I'm just like, no, it's gonna be great. Oh man, am I getting cut off?
I can hear you still, Daniel.
We can hear you. It's okay.
Yeah. So, it's. I'm trying to harness that the way it's working in me, but lately I've been so emotional, man. It's crazy. A lot of it has to do with my son, and I think I wrote that in there about how I think my son. I've been tied to him in previous lives. He's a 5/1 manifesting generator, but his south node is right on my son, and every single night I feel overwhelmed with emotion, and I can't do anything about it. It's this feeling like I can't let you down. I can't lose you again. It's feeling like that, and it's like that's an overwhelming feeling that overrides any mental thing that I could ever conceptualize. I don't know if that's even useful, but yeah.
You brought up something that I forgot to ask about. You have an autistic son. That's the son you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is he all right too?
No, he's I need to look at his chart, but he's half and half, 50-50.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember exactly what the setup was. I know his brain is passive, and he has touch cognition, and I feel like that's how we communicate a lot, because he doesn't really talk, but he does say things, and I'm able to understand what he means. But yeah, and then he has like this big old birthmark on his back, and that's how I feel this feeling like something happened to him in his past life, and I didn't get to mourn him properly. And I think I made a post about that, but yeah, I don't want to make it too depressing. So somebody made a post about do you ever listen to a sad song to make yourself sadder? And I related to that. So
yeah, well, you have feeling cognition, so it's like it is a part of your intelligence.
Yeah. it's becoming more and more sensitive to that. I don't know how that's happening, but I feel it's heightened in terms of feeling people's like where you're at. I can almost get a snapshot of like, okay, you probably had something going on yesterday or before this. Like I don't see that with you guys right now. You guys seem totally, and so, but there's some people where
Last week, you should have seen us last week.
how was it? You mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was rough, I think, for both Tatiana and I. Yeah, it was it's just yeah, I don't know, Tatiana, do you want to talk about your experience?
So I just want to mention that it was like complete the feeling that I'm switched off completely, and that's the only thing I'm like Netflixing, and that's it, because I need something to distract myself. So I'm not feeling bad or good. I'm just not present, and that's like really strange. So I suppose that's how the lowest low can look. You don't have energy even for your feelings. I had more intense periods when at least I had some feeling. Yeah, you do not have anything. Yeah, you do not have yourself almost present. Yes, but so one day I was in that state, and then it became. So I suppose this was the lowest point last Friday. I suppose something like that. And then it started getting better and better. Now Susan says that everything would be okay. Yeah,
I did feel that the last time. I felt something the last time, but I didn't know what it was, but I felt the sort of anxiety there. Yeah, I don't know where it was coming from, but yeah.
Yeah, I went through I think a mutation a little bit. I just recognized I'm overambitious with myself, and I get myself over committed. Like you talked about, it's like this reaching for something and overdoing it. So, but it's almost like it's not something I can control, but I'm watching it to understand what that is and why. Because it takes a lot of energy out of myself. I get extra. I think there's a lot of feeling of the nodes, the control, wanting the depth, but having to control how fighting, because I've got the right mind and left brain. So there's an activity always going on in my brain, but there's this resistance or needing to learn how to be more receptive to, instead of trying to control my experience all the time and being anxious. I think I experience a lot of anxiety of needing to control my environment for security.
For security.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to be sure that nothing bad happens. Yeah. So that's what I'm facing now in my ensemble. We're singing together, like 8, 9 persons and so on. And I was previously definitely, but we are developing. Each develops slowly in his own pace. But when we come together, then I notice like I stopped to care like how it goes, what kind of process it is, how one can see it from the outside, and miracles. Like I see simply miracles. We are all together, voices are perfectly tuned, and everybody is walking on the project, and we are not fighting. It's like amazing thing can happen when you stop caring and controlling. Yeah, and everything happens by itself. But it's so difficult to believe in it, to stop controlling, to stop hiding and protecting yourself, first of all, your ego. Yeah.
Yes, the flesh, wants to protect itself. The soul is just in there for the ride. But the flesh. That's the thing about the ego, that we think it's such a bad thing, but it's just the vehicle, isn't it? I mean, if you really think about it, what we call ego just means I in Greek, and it's just this thing that I call Daniel. And so anyway, I don't know where that was going, but He must have had a point there somewhere. Sorry.
Okay. So the protection
Protection.
mechanism, yeah, that functions the way it was programmed in our early childhood. Like I wasn't able to protect Tanya when she was small. Then I'm gonna be controlling all the circumstances to protect her when she's grown up. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So we're gonna have to move on because we're running out of time. Okay.
Maybe we could jump to astrology part, or do you have something to add on human design?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about this. I was trying to make it a little bit simpler. This chart is talking about the unconscious versus the conscious and how you experience that. But I really wanted to talk really quickly about your splenic hits that you talked about, and then how these mirror each other, the judgment versus the fantasy, because there's a mirroring going on, and there's no consciousness to it. But I wonder how if you've experienced in your life the mirroring of the judgment versus the fantasy, and whether you experience that with yourself. Is there a guilt around these desires that you have, or whatever it is that's going on? You mentioned something that you had to really a lot of people have to sober up on their Saturn return about not wanting to be engaged in your family, and how that, I'm throwing a lot at you. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you experience that from however you understand that and developing in your life?
Yeah, I think we talked about that. That the connection between that channel of judgment and the fantasies and its darker form was, a few years into my marriage, I did want to. I started to have fantasies of wanting to leave it all behind. I was recently married, but it was already like, oh, this isn't really what I thought, and you're not really thinking about putting in work at this time. You're still sort of in your 20s mindset where you're, if there's something wrong, like whatever, you're not, maturity, whatever. And I started to fantasize about leaving my wife. I was, thinking about, going off, not with anyone in particular, but just not really wanting to do the hard work and being critical. There's the 1858 towards my marriage, just seeing all the flaws that it's like, there's this problem and there's this problem, and you're not really like, well, are you going to fix it? And that wasn't even in the question. And so, that came to a head, and that's when I think I started to really read about the channel recognition, because it's like I'm starting to recognize what truly is worthy of my of giving my emotional attention to, of giving my presence to. I feel that before then it was more scattered. It was just like, well, what's the next external thing that's going to make me feel happy for a little while, and so that Saturn return sort of helped, like, oh, for the first time, I'm able to recognize that, yes, I have this 4130, even though I didn't think about it like that. But it's just like I have this this proclivity towards fantasy that I need to channel in a more constructive way. Yeah. Yeah.
Tatiana, do you want to ask any follow-up questions about that?
No, I do think we can proceed.
Okay.
So we
All right.
dig the load.
Okay, and so you have the 36 bridge there, and we talked about that as far as like what that is about. And do you want to comment on what you think it's about, this need for experience, or how that plays into maybe the fantasy?
Yeah. Wanting new experiences, wanting to penetrate new experiences, and for better or worse. And so that was one of those things where that was probably might have been the pull, right? Just having the bridge might be the pull that's pulling that fantasy towards the wrong direction. I know that my ex girlfriend before my wife, she had the 36, and everything ended in total crisis. I mean, my dad passed away. She left me while that was happening. I was all distraught and everything, and she went back to her country. She wasn't from here, and so it was just like a mess. And so that I've had people come my way where it's always ended in that kind of like tragic crisis-y thing that like, oh, why does it have to happen? But through that, it's this feeling like it tunes you. It causes you to focus in a little more on where not to sort of take things in the future, right? What experiences not to penetrate or get into, people in this case. So yeah,
It's learning. It's connecting your. You have a lot of unconscious wisdom there. Judgment. Even if you have this fantasy of what could be, but it's experience that connects you to your conscious understanding. So it makes sense that you sometimes have to go through crises to understand what it is. You said to be of service. You're the channel. You're the cross of service.
Yeah, I know Denzel has that, so that's not a bad thing. Denzel Washington.
It's not a bad thing at all. It's about being of service, but not taking it personally. So it's like not personalizing your service, and that's probably related to your desire motivation, your transference. Is when you step in is like, I want to do this for this sake of saving the world. Then it goes, you know what I mean? You're putting yourself in there, and you're also wanting to be perfect. And whatever feedback that you get from that, if you're not perfect, then you get bitter or resentful because you've given service to somebody, and you're like, don't they appreciate my service? So it's just being of service without the ego involved, which you have that open ego. So it's like not personalizing whatever service that you're offering.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I want to help you. I want you to do there's the change. Oh, great. On your way. Yeah. Like that. That makes me feel good. But I mean, I do want to receive recognition for that too. So it's just trying to find where I can best do that, where I'm not asking for it because I don't want to ask, but maybe we're in a scenario where I'm of service, but they're still seeing it and recognizing it.
It's tricky. It's all tricky, right? Being a projector is tricky because we need to be recognized, or
we need this recognition, like an air we breathe. Yeah. But I had my teacher in human design. She has a cross of service. She serves perfectly to her purpose. Yeah, and students are coming like to her. Yeah, of course, students are reaching out to her to study design. Yeah.
Wow, that's very hopeful for me. Yeah.
Well, you've got the channel of the teacher, so I think that's a perfect place for you, the storytelling. And anyway, there's so many things to dig into, but I want to go into your astrology really quick. And I'm not going to go into a lot of it because I think you have to leave pretty soon. But
I'll wait till you're done. It's no problem. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm really just going to talk about very briefly this yod that you have. It's called the finger of God, and I've pointed it out with your Mercury on your midheaven, and Mars is the first leg. They call that Mercury is the apex of your yod. It's very important in your life, and I've heard you talk about this in your human design, and it is, and you said that. It does make that channel, right?
Yeah.
With the south node, which you see here is the other leg, is the south node in Chiron, down here on your right near your south node. So in your human design chart, it makes a channel, and so there's the Mercury is the apex of the yod, and it doesn't see the energy of Mars. So there's this desire in you to be of service. you know,
Interesting.
to communicate, to be recognized. And there's an adjustment that needs to be made between the this innate drive to contribute versus, you know, your communication and your seeking and your teaching. So you're learning how to use that energy appropriately. So whatever it is that you're trying to communicate, that you're trying to reach for, is kind of needing to adjust with this drive to be recognized. And once you do that, once you get that adjustment under control, then you can be quite skilled in a healer and a nurturer, because your Chiron is right next to your south node, and that is ruled by the moon. And for Cancer south node, as often is that they take more time to develop. They need more nurturing time. They need more time to develop. But sometimes what happens is that they cling to that security, and so they're like, they never feel like they're never feel like they're ready to go out. But you have so much energy on your north node that it's forcing. So when you think about this is your last moment in time where you're kind of making a transition out of what you've been in the past lifetimes, it's so true, because you have so much energy on your north node. So a lot of people, you have to wait until you're, you know, they say you're Uranus opposition to really go towards your north node, but you're not, because you've got so much energy. So in past lives, yes, you've been accomplished. Yes, you've been, you know, you've focused on your career, you focused on all of those things. And in this life, you're doing it, but it's different. You have some things that you need to figure out first. Your retrograde planets, so your Mars, your desire, what you think about living in the moment, you know, your mundane experience. You talked about how you struggled with your responsibilities as a parent and being in the mundane world and your mundane life, and how you want new experiences. You want to experience things in the present. So the challenge for you is to find newness in the mundane every day when you wake up, to be present in the moment of being there. That's your gift, is you're right. You know, you're receptive. You have that capability, but it's your mind that's thinking that this is not new. This is not the pleasure seeking. The moon is in the addict, the line of the addict, you know. So there's this conflict in you of wanting that new experience to experience and be present, of course. But if you're repeating things all the time, it's the gate of transitoriness. It's like, I don't want to repeat the same thing over and over again. So for you, it's about, okay, well, I have these responsibilities and I need to go to meet those responsibilities, but how do I bring freshness and newness to these experiences of responsibility? And so that's what you're trying to work out. And that's where you're the apex. And also it's an inconjunct to your south node. So like you said, your son, your experience with your son, and how you feel like you have past lives with your son. And the Mercury is basically can relate to that, your son and your experience with your son. And then you have Jupiter on your south node, which is your dad, and the experience of your fatherhood and the expectations of your father on you, and that resistance to that. And so you're revisiting what that is in relation to your kids and your marriage and your romance in life and your fantasy world. What is that to you, and how can you reframe that to be an experience and be of service to other people in that way?
Wow, that was so impressive. Thank you for that very amazing analysis that you did.
I don't know if it was amazing. That was just a very small little clip of what I brought out of everything. And so I'm just kind of like bringing that out. Tatiana, do you have anything specific you want to ask or?
No, most likely I'm done with the questions for today. Yeah, especially, but we have some slides with with Uranus opposition and so on. So would we dive into this, or maybe we
Well,
should skip it already?
yeah, I
What
mean,
you'd like.
we can go into it a little bit, but I just wanted to point out, you were asking me about the life cycle and how the 36 kind of connects to each one. And what I will say,
Yeah.
I will say that your Saturn return, you don't really start to really digest it, I think Ross said, until you're really in it. And you are really in it. So you've been able to understand it in some aspects of what it meant and how it's teaching you. Basically, you kind of can have that experience so you can reflect on it, because it's 4 years in.
Yeah.
But like your future, life cycle, you can try to grasp it, but without the experience of it, it's very hard to really predict what that's going to look like. But you can look at the patterns, and you notice that 36 is a big theme in your cycle charts, and you bridge it in every single one. So it's definitely something that you're leaning into to learn about, to experience. But what that means is you got to go through the experience, because you don't learn from it until you go through that experience. So it's like, you have such an interesting chart, because it's very experiential, except for the judgment, and you've got some individuality in there. You've got logic as far as the logical sharing of your judgments of your service. But most of all, a lot of what you are connecting is what is the experience. You have to go through the experience to have that fine-tuned judgment to give and teach to others, right?
Yeah. So my son has the channel of transitoriness. My other son, not my oldest. So I don't know if that could contribute towards having it in there. Maybe is he going to be around? Because man, he gets into little crises of constantly of life or death, falling off things, and
my son has that too. So yes, so you are learning through him and through other people that have come through your life. So it's, you don't know, probably right now, you don't know what's going to happen in your Uranus opposition. And maybe some of the people that are in your Uranus opposition aren't even here. The thing that I will say about the particulars in our chart is that channeling them productively helps, so like, the crisis or the transitoriness is like, well, you could go into therapy and you can see lots of crises all the time, but it doesn't have to do with you. It's just that you have that in your environment to learn from, right?
Yeah, I guess I can wrap it up with just saying that I do find that I'm not that I like crisis situation, but that I feel that I do well in it.
Okay, but it's nice. Feeling good feeling.
You're a calm presence in it. You can bring that,
like the eye of the hurricane.
Yes.
But it does feel that way. Like, just I watch war movies all the time. Not recently anymore. HD has really taken over a lot of that. But this like tied into moments in history where there's been crisis, and I'm just like, yes, let me absorb as much of what was happening as if I was there. It's sort of experience at 36 without really being there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's how the mind shows it attraction to this absent gate. Yeah, that's amazing. So you experience it creatively, learning some stuff.
Yeah. Well, ladies, I have to go because I have to pick up my son. But if you guys want me again, I would love to come. If not, then I understand.
So much. Yes, we had such a great time.
Thank
you.
Thank
you. Thank you so much.
So nice having you. Yeah. Bye.
But
we're staying here. Bye.
Okay.
So we did our best to press it, all the information we had.
Yeah, there was so much, and we didn't even get to I think we probably got to a smidgen of it, but it was good. I think. Okay, so let's go to our judgments. I had a little bit of things just prepared just to point out the patterns, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. So this week I was blessed. So the only thing when I was switched off, so I could only, for example, watch Bridgertons or whatever, yeah, something, yeah, some period drama, or surprisingly well was listening to any kind of lectures and human design materials. And I'm active in English speaking sphere. So luckily I have a person here in Berlin with whom I can talk in real time, offline, yeah, about the human design. But mainly I'm like in English space of human design. And suddenly two nice YouTube videos from Danya Trofimov. He is really famous in Russian human design segment. And from Tomasa, he is one of the first pupils of Ra in the Soviet Union that time, so that was already Russia. So he belongs to first four or five students from this Russian-speaking space, and he's a really good friend of Alok. And they all three of them are really in close contact. And I was surprised. So Daniil, he's on the left. He is already 10 years in experiment. And Tomasa, he was also Osha Sanyasin. That's why he has this name. Yes, Sanyasin's name. He's like 25 years in experiment.
Wow.
And it was really helpful listening to them on that day, because they showed me a true vibrations of true experiment. So they're living it, definitely. Even though in Russian human design segment, you often meet the people who are trying to sell human design just because, oh, it's nice, a nice thing to earn some good money because the prices are relatively high and so on. And I would be spreading, doesn't matter what kind of information, and selling it as a human design. That's the approach that is quite popular in Russian human design space. But luckily these two persons, and I was surprised that Daniil, for example, he's studying now in psychoanalysis, psychotherapy. So he's involved a lot in psychotherapy for himself, but he's a business coach in his past before he met design, I suppose. But he's doing a lot of therapy for himself, and he's learning. He understood recently that the things that he receives from human design experiments, there are some things that are left out, are not manageable through human design. And there are some things that you won't be successful, some spheres where you won't be successful in your experiment unless you would help this deconditioning to go, the deconditioning from your family and your experiences, and you can achieve this through psychotherapy. That's how he says it. It resonates really well with what I think, with our 18.5, gate 18, line 5. So I was surprised to hear it from him, because like usually we expect that the person stays in the frames that they thought is good for him. No, he's already somewhere else. Like last time I heard, he was in totally other place. He was in Bali and living there. So it's like another completely different scenario. And now you see the person who's studying psychoanalysis and deep. So I could only imagine his next steps. He's manifesting generator with 3420, definitely. He lives alone with his dog in outskirts of St. Petersburg. But same is true for Tomasa. He's also living alone. He's 70 already, but he's young. Young, I mean, not like you hear it in his voice. He stayed young. He's like living his full life, saying that this is a time when we have to learn from our children, and not vice versa. Yeah, so we have to learn from our kids. That's how I feel it. That resonated with me strongly. So the youngsters are here to teach us, and not the other way around. And he feels it, and he is the one who learns a lot from his friends, and all his friends are younger than him. And it's like amazing where the experiment could lead you. Like, when you hear it, when you see such examples, you think, okay, I'm doing it the way only I can do it, but just see how the people are developing in it, unfolding themselves in this experiment, and it stimulates. I can also continue going my way. I was really surprised, and I'm truly thankful to Dania and to Tomasa for this valuable information for the whole community in human design in Russia.
I simply love these pictures. I love the dark therapy.
Therapy person, yeah, that's his
This
new
very
form. Yeah.
black, that's like New York, Russia, what I would imagine Russia. But then you've got this other side with a lock, and the other one is just like the crazy in the moment, serious, and then crazy in the moment. So there's these different sides of them. I love that picture. When was that picture taken of a lock and I can't pronounce the names. I'm sorry.
So Tomaso. He's Vladimir, actually, like my husband, but he follows he's always presented with his Sannyasin name, Tomaso. I don't know. So like 2-3 years maybe ago, it became quite difficult to travel to Ibiza from Russia. But he was quite often. He considers Alok his close friend and his main influence. So after Ra, of course. So he considers him the closest one.
Well, I would probably consider him too, because I resonated a lot with Alok when I found him. So that's really cool. So did you discover was it a Russian video, or how did you discover them and what they were about?
So Daniil, I'm simply subscribed to them on YouTube, but my colleague in human design, Lena, who lives in Berlin, told me about Tomasa's interview, and Daniil I found myself. But I wasn't revisiting them after 2 or 3 years, and I see the progress, like the progress of movement towards themselves. Even though there are many years in experiment, even though they're both public persons, and still their experience, they stay true to themselves, and that's what inspires me.
Cool. All right, so I'd love to. Is it in Russia, the interviews, or are they in English?
Yeah, in Russian, but maybe you could watch them with subtitles, especially Tomasa maybe. But Dania is also interesting. But Tomasa is telling some historical facts about how it was.
Yeah,
at that time when he started.
I was just revisiting your the gamer guy that you brought up to us in one of your judgments. I don't know if you saw that comment.
Dr. K, yeah, Dr. K.
I have the people that I really listen to on YouTube over and over again, and then I was like, I saw this while I was driving. I was like, oh, this looks interesting. It's talking about enlightenment, what our brain does in enlightenment, and I listened to it, and I was, he wasn't saying anything I didn't know, but I loved how he was simplifying it and talking about the different ways that we reach for happiness. So. I love and I've heard from other people that they love your recommendations. So thank you for giving them. Okay, so for me, and this was totally accidental. I was kind of like you over the weekend after I had I was just forced into rest because I couldn't move. Like I just had no energy. And I knew it. I knew I had a lot of mental activity and stress and all sorts of things. And I was like, and when I see that coming over me, when I need to rest, I'm like I have to just rechannel and just not listen to any human design. And because I get quite obsessed with certain things and wanting to dig into certain things. And I was like, okay, I've got to decompress and I've got to relax. And so accidentally, and actually while I was cooking dinner, because I like to listen to something while I'm in cooking dinner, I happened upon this this comedy show with Hannah and Einbinder. She's also a part of this series called The Hacks, which I've only watched a couple, but it's funny. But I actually got a lot more out of her stand-up because, humor is such a great way to disarm people. And I'm not very good at it. I'm very serious, but it's a great way to disarm people and bring, I don't know, it's like a provocation. You know, you're provoking somebody to think about something differently. And when people can laugh at it and see the irony in, you know, what they're bringing about, like she goes to the edges of, you know, she talks about one of the thing that I really caught my attention right away was she talked about our focus on ADD and how everybody's diagnosed with being ADD. But it's basically because we hate our jobs, because we're forced to be Ottomans, and how you know, AI is kind of pushing us more and more into becoming an Ottoman. And there are definitely functions that have already, you know, gone there to the extreme, but everything is going more and more and more and more to that. And so because of that, you know, we're diagnosed with ADD because we have to focus on something that is completely not human. It's a machine, and we're forced to do things like that for our own money, you know, that we need to survive in this world, unfortunately. So I was like, my ears perked up just from that little joke, because I was like, oh my God, that's so true. And then she's talking about, you know, I don't know if she's talked about being bisexual, and she talks about some gender themes and her liberalism, and she kind of poked fun and, you know, oh, I'm not, you know, into electric cars because they're good for the environment. So she's going to the extreme of why she's, you know, has these value systems, and poking fun at them to make you look at them differently, because there's so much propaganda on both sides about who people are and why they're that way and all this stuff. So it's almost like she's bringing out such an exaggeration of another person might view her as being, you know, this is why she likes certain things. And she was poking fun at Bernie. She's like, oh no, I just like Bernie because he's handsome and he's cute, and I just really like, you know, I'm really hot for him. Like the ways that she talks about was just so funny. She talks about being you have to watch it. It's I don't want to go through too much of it, but it's funny and interesting to think about certain things differently. So I enjoyed it.
Okay, noted well.
All right, so I guess that's another episode with Tatiana and I. I think we have a couple more interviews before we take it solo again. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Do you want to say anything, final words, Tatiana?
Yeah, just stay tuned. We have also another guest next time we record our podcast in 2 weeks. So thank you, everybody who survived until the end of this episode. We did our best to torture you with our thoughts and our guests, but we hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. All right. Till next time. Bye.
Yeah. Ciao, Cacao.